It's Sunday in Colorado, and we're here not with a typical guest, but rather with Jack Roberts from For the Love of Locals, which is a live stream media platform showcasing local Colorado talents. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get right down to it. How did For the Love of Locals get started, and what brought you to what you're doing today?
Good question. So I started this program, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was a while back, and initially it just began as a live show at the Moon Room Summit Music Hall down in Denver, and it was just a free night of music. The studio I was at the time was paying the bands in studio credit. So the bands still felt like they got a little something out of it. The audience could enjoy a night of music for free. And it was kind of good vibes, just like no industry pressure, no pre-sales, just like a good time. And over the last couple of years, it's kind of morphed into a live stream, especially in 2020 when it became more of a necessity. And so we're just rolling with the times, trying to provide a free source to live music. It's just been the goal.
Was it a live stream before the 2020 pandemic?
We did a series of 10 shows in 2018, but it wasn't nearly as popular then. It was still kind of like, well, we could go to regular shows, so who cares?
So did you consider the possibilities of live streaming back when you started doing that series, or did it kind of become, was it the necessity of live streaming and the access to live music that you needed through the 2020 pandemic that sort of prompted this idea around live streaming?
I mean, back then it was so my like regular day job is scoring music for commercials, and I had a lot of opportunity come to me by using music, but in advertising and commercial ventures. And I just saw so many other local musicians struggling with like how to provide a sustainable income from music. And I kind of just thought like, well, if we can bring corporate money into local music, then funding can really change for a lot of the ways that these things look. And so initially the idea was of the live stream was to make a program that could be sold and was attractive to local companies to sponsor it and pay them, a couple $1,000s for a 30-minute show that everyone could have access to online. Whereas when you do like just a regular show, it's much harder to get that promotional effort across. Like I could actually offer 30-second ads to people through the live stream. So we had something to offer.
Hmm. Do you think that that business model of bringing corporate money into local live music via live stream, do you think that that's a sustainable model moving forward into the future?
It depends. It depends on the companies. Like there's definitely certain local brands that are more interested in supporting local music and have employees or friends in the community that see the value in that. Definitely, local companies have more of an interest than national brands.
Certainly, and I suppose that might be because you're mostly streaming local music, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps in the future, if this grows to feature more national acts, you could potentially see a larger interest from bigger corporations.
That's true. If you have the reach, I don't suppose why not.
Sure. All right. Well, let's back up a little bit. I want to ask you a couple questions about sort of the logistical decisions you guys have come across. How did you mentioned, of course, that this started at the Moon Room, and I believe that you sort of navigate around local venues to put this production on. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a couple different spots right now.
What are some of those spots that are hosting you right now?
Our two main ones at the moment are Doghouse Music, and that is in Lafayette. just south of Boulder, and Summit Church, which is in Centennial, just south of Denver.
How did you come across those venues to as hosts?
Well, so actually in 2019, the program went completely dark for a year. And I was kind of just working on my studio business for a while at the time. And one of the bands that I was recording, Neon the Bishop, they were musicians at the Summit Church in Centennial. And as the pandemic progressed, they said, we should really bring this program back. And the church would like to give you the infrastructure to do it. Come use our stage and our equipment, and we'll start trying to make some more opportunity for bands right now, because it was such a terrible time for live music. So
sure. What about the equipment? How did that all come together? When you started your live stream programming, what did you start out with, and what has that evolved into?
To be honest, personally, I have no equipment. It has always been a collaborative effort. Like it's the church's stage, it's the church's lighting, it's the church's cameras.
Okay.
When we do it at Doghouse, it's Doghouse's cameras, it's Doghouse's lighting. And when we did it at DCPA in 2018, same situation. It was the production company we were working with, and I've always very much been on the booking side of stuff. So yeah, no equipment, just good friends.
That's a good example of the collaborative efforts here in the music community in Colorado, I think. Always nice to see that people coming through for each other. In the future, moving forward, I'm just going to ask this a little bit differently. We sort of talked about this already, but do you see this live stream growing beyond what it is today, right now? And that question might include, the future of what live music looks like moving forward. We're starting to see some venues open up, starting to see shows booked, very contingent on everyone continuing to be vaccinated and so on. But how do you see this moving forward, and how do you see this growing?
It's hard. It's really hard to know. I think that at the core, like, people really still want to experience live music, and it doesn't really replace the setting of being at the venue and that experience. And so it's a nice thought right now, and it helps the bands, and it's good. And I think that in certain applications, it could be really useful. Like if there was a sold out show at Red Rocks, it could be live streamed around the world, and then you could, experience John Mayer or whatever, EDC, whatever you want, just from your computer. But I still don't ever think it would actually replace the sensation of being at the show. And it depends. I think it's a nice tool, but I think people are excited to get back to music as usual.
Do you think that live streaming, obviously For the Love of Locals is a show that is free and accessible to everybody. Do you think that should be accessible? Like, for example, if there's a sold out Red Rocks show this summer or next summer, and they're providing a live stream, do you think that should be accessible to everybody in a free capacity?
It depends. I mean, I'm sure that they would find a way to charge an admission for it, but in the same sense that we did it, if you've got 100,000 people watching your live stream, you can pad that with commercials, and that money should be able to go back to the artists, regardless of their size. Like they're providing the content that's drawing in the people to watch them. And so, I'd like to see that sort of model just go back to the bands more, if anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be free if people are willing to pay for it, but I think that bands should be as well compensated as possible.
I agree. And that sounds like a potentially good business model down the road. I want to ask you a little bit about you personally and your personal business. How did you get into tracking and scoring commercials?
Honestly, it was kind of a lucky thing and a little ironic. I was at school for audio engineering, and it's about 2015, about 7 years ago. And I had a friend approach me and say, hey, can you do this? Can you score like these couple spots? And at the time I was like, yeah, I'll try it, whatever. And I did it and it was okay. And they offered me a job after that. They said, would you like to be like this sound guy for this production company, and you'll score stuff and you'll do mixing for commercial work? And at the time I was like, not really. I kind of resisted it. But I thought about it for a while, and then I did end up taking it. And I've been with the same company for 7 years now, just doing the same thing. And that business has grown a little bit more. And I do work for a few other companies now, and it's nice. It's creative. It keeps me on my toes, and it's good pay. It's one of the better ways to get decent pay as a musician, I think.
What's your primary instrument?
I would say that it's probably guitar if I had to actually choose an instrument, but at this point it's more mixing and production. Like I do a lot of work in the box, and I can play guitar and piano and drums, but I don't play them well, but I edit well enough to make it sound like I play them well.
So mixing is your main instrument. That's an interesting answer. Do you think that that's kind of the role of a producer, that any given producer at any given time, that should be their answer, that the mixing and the being able to hear the whole sound and put it together is really their primary instrument, as opposed to something individual like the keys or the guitar?
Potentially, for sure. I mean, the like Pro Tools and my desk and my compressors are an extension of the creativity in the sound that I'm trying to shape. And I guess in that sense, it's as much an instrument as anything else. So I don't know. Yeah, good question. But I do see it. I do see it as like an instrument, because I can shape sound, and I can create music at my fingertips, just like any other musician. It's just not a traditional one.
So would you say that you might, we often hear some, our elders talk a little bit about how, kids these days are making music with their computers, and how that's not really real music. How do you feel about that criticism?
I think it's real music, but there's definitely like a reason to have old stuff sometimes, and have different pieces of equipment. Like, I'll just take you around real quick.
Yeah, no, this is great.
I've got this organ is from 1961. Mm-hmm. This little toy piano is a total piece of junk. I got some more.
Hang on, do you use that toy piano?
I use all of this stuff. I've used all of these things on recordings before. And I mean, it doesn't mean that like every recording calls for those things, but there's a time and a place for that. And when I can use those things, I try to as much as possible, because it's not a plugin. It's not going to be able to be found on Splice and like none of that stuff. Like, I still try to get my hands dirty as much as possible, but I'm not afraid of the new technology.
I think that's great. Can I just request that you just take us on the rest of the little tour? Can we do that?
Sure.
All right. Let's see the rest of your setup.
Let's go. All right. I'm going to flip the camera for you.
Sure.
I've got a pretty good size 88 key right here.
Uh-huh.
Here's the rest of the room. Couple guitars.
How many of those guitars do you use on a regular basis?
I use the acoustic pretty often, and that Strat copy is pretty good. And then there's a Telly in here. That's a pretty nice one. Here's the vocal booth, and a couple cabs back there.
Very nice.
And then the rest of the keys, I've got a couple of like toy keys and synths in here.
So how you have your keyboard shelf, so to speak, arranged there, yep. Are you standing and playing where they are set up, or are you taking those down individually and setting them up other areas?
It's a combination. Certain ones, like the organ and this toy one up here, like they have to be played to create music. But I also have it set up that this piece down here, this Motu MIDI rack actually sends my MIDI information all over the place. So if I play this little keyboard right here under the desk, it will send the info to my Moog. It will send it to this Korg one underneath, and it will send it to this one over here, all from the same key. So it's kind of just like, I don't know, like a internet for the keyboards, I guess. So they're all kind of hooked up at the same time.
That's great. That's a great little streamlining thing setup you got, I think.
Thanks.
Is there anything else you want to show us in the studio?
Oh, I don't know. Doing a little bit of like patching up stuff. So now, right now, so I got some paint out, but got Oxford, just a handful of little, these are like rack keyboards and preamps in here. The main console in the desk is summing box from Dangerous, Apollo, and then 2 Pultec style warm tube EQs. And this side's all compression. So I've got the warm bus comp. Shadow Hills one right here is my main 2-bus compressor. And then the speakers here on this side of the room. So awesome. Playback is through Atoms and the good old Rocket 5s.
Fantastic. So this is all you then. You're basically a one-man band.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, just a couple more questions for you, Jack, and then we'll get you out of here. Want to ask you about how you think live music and just kind of music in general, the whole process, if the industry has changed due to the last year of the pandemic. And I guess that's 2 separate things, live music versus recording artists necessarily, as you've sort of explained already. But really, I want to get a sense of your thoughts of how the music industry is going to evolve from here, because it's going to have to, I think. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. To be honest, I'd honestly love to hear your thoughts. Like, I think that the last year, 15 months, whatever, I mean, we're coming up on 15 months pretty soon, has been really strange. I think that a lot of the major popular artists have kind of been a little bit reclusive because touring isn't an option. So if they're backed by a big label, maybe that label is saying hey, you can't do your big release right now because you need to be touring to be able to recoup the money from this release. So I felt like the immediate result was we've kind of lost some of the richness of music that we've had. A lot of artists are just not doing it right now, or if they are, they're waiting until things open back up. The second thing is, I think a lot of people are putting out as much singles as they can on the lower, smaller artist level, more local and regional. But same thing, it's it's hard. How do you continue to engage with your fan base when you can't see them? And live performance is such a big part of that. So honestly, it's a big question for me. And the handful of artists that call my studio their creative place, it's something we've been racking our brain for over the last year. We're well, how do we keep your fans engaged? What do we do? Do we do a music video? Do we do another song? Is that really doing anything? Do you need to play shows? I don't have the answer. So
it's true. There was a recent interview in Rolling Stone with Pete Townsend of The Who, where he talks about how, booking for 2021 has been tough because The Who did cancel a tour at the beginning of 2020. And they've been trying to rebook this tour, but it's basically as you said, all the big established artists have pushed their stuff to 2022. And it's because they don't want to take the hit on limited capacity venues and whatever financially that might mean for them on their paydays. But Pete Townsend seemed to indicate that there's a shift in how people are purchasing tickets. Lots of young people are purchasing tickets for younger bands, but old people 30 to 70 years old, is what he said in the interview, aren't really buying tickets for some of these older bands like The Who and Rolling Stones and, whoever else might be touring. And that's an interesting shift in dynamics, I think, in how you sell tickets and who sells tickets. Another example of this is I have a 10-year-old, and his favorite band is this band called AJR. They recently announced a tour, and it was very confusing because I went to try and buy tickets for it because they're playing Fiddler's Green. They announced a show at Fiddler's Green, and I was like, oh, right on. We'll try and take him to see AJR. And the date on it is June 10th, 2022, which was so confusing for me because I was like, why would they announce a tour for 2022? And I had to go around to their website. I went around to all the ticketing agencies, and sure enough, tickets for next summer. I was like, I'm not going to buy tickets for next summer. And, I don't know, that's a personal choice on my end, but, I don't know. I don't like to make that kind of commitment a year in advance, but apparently people are. And that's exactly what some of these bands are doing.
Yeah. And I can see how that I've kind of seen that coming a little bit. And I'm worried about the impact that will have on local music, because obviously all of these venues have taken a huge hit over the last year. Yeah. So to make that back, they're going to be trying to operate at capacity as much as possible in the coming years, yeah, which is going to mean less music and more national acts booked further out. So yeah, even as local bands try to come back, I think it's going to be difficult to frequent some of their past places. Like maybe the Black Sheep is going to be booked 7 days a week with national acts. I mean, who knows, which would be crazy to me because, I've played the Black Sheep a ton of times back in the day when I was in my old band. So it's like,
yeah, of course, it's a established local venue. It's one of the oldest in Colorado, I believe, or at least still operating. And yeah, no, I agree with you. Do you think that ticket pricing will go up substantially because of this?
Sure. Yeah, I could see that happening with really like no benefit to the bands either. Like it'll just be like they are still collecting kind of the same pay or maybe even less.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
No, it sounds like the same old sad story. Is the venues are going to bottom line everyone. Is what's going to happen, and that's unfortunate.
Well, it sucks because you don't want to lose them either,
Nope.
And then just have no venues. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time.
So how does a local artist combat the things that we just talked about, being pushed out by national acts and their venues and rising ticket prices potentially?
Merchandise. Make merchandise and push merchandise. I also always try to see if the artists that I work with are capable of like additionally creating like an acoustic set that can be performed in coffee house settings, because that sort of setting isn't going to go away. Like you're not going to see national acts coming and playing coffee houses. So even if you're a heavy rock band or you're a pop artist, if you can make your set translate into something a little more dialed back, like there's still going to be a lot of performance opportunity for you, just maybe not in the way that you thought. And also I've been trying to push as many artists as possible into like, what are your publishing options? Like, can you get into this next MTV show? Like, let's look for a good publisher for you and see if we can find different revenue streams.
Publisher being an agent, being an entity. What do you mean by publisher?
Being the music business that you would sell your copyright to, like the use of your copyright, and then they would go and pitch on your behalf to these programs that are looking for music in their content. So like one I've been seeing a lot of in Denver recently is the Music Playground, and they're not a Denver publisher. Their offices are in New York and Los Angeles, I believe, but they have published Electric Animals. They had a Modern Suspects track. I think they just did There was a couple of them. There's a couple on the Denver list, and these are so like Electric Animals just had their song played in an episode of Shameless, and I know Modern Suspects was in Teen Mom before that, and so it's like, you know, these little exchanges where it's like, all right, now your music is being used on TV. You get a reasonable size check up front, and then you're going to see some royalties from ASCAP or BMI on the back end if you're all set up. So,
and you get your name out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Similar to back in the day when the OC was running and we had all those OC compilation albums coming out.
Exactly.
I believe Bon Iver blew up partially because of that.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right, Jack, where can our audience find For the Love of Locals, and where can they view the live stream, any future live streams you'll be doing?
So we're on Facebook and Instagram primarily as just For the Love of Locals, either / or @. Pretty easy to find. Our little logo's a guitar with like a heart in it or something, so you'll know it when you see it. And our coming live streams are all going to be featured on our website, which is just fortheloveoflocals.com, which we're in the process of rebuilding right now because we're kind of just like combating a little bit of the challenges with copyright between Facebook and YouTube. And we're all good on like our legality for how we do that, but they make it really hard and they make you jump through a lot of hoops. So we're kind of just working on setting up our own system. So fortheloveoflocals.com.
When do you have another live stream scheduled?
Not at this time. We're waiting to get that infrastructure set up. We're looking at probably June or July. I think we'll be back.
Awesome. Well, we'll certainly keep our ears to the ground on that one. Jack Roberts, founder and curator for the Love of Locals. Thank you so much, Jack. It's been a pleasure. Keep on keeping on. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. Until next time, it's been ColoLocal. Next time, it's been ColoLocal. Next time, it's been ColoLocal.